Welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three American expats explore different topics related to living and working in South Korea. With a combined 45 years of living experience in Asia, there are plenty of stories to tell. So, pop in your headphones and make yourself comfortable. It's time for the Soul Patch Podcast.
My tainted perception distorts, my true meaning is blurred. I am lost to the echoes of whispering.
We just kind of, we don't know when we're going to start, so it's good to have everything on record.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already like, this is already potentially
This already sounds like our
stuff.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What do you guys do? Do you guys do first names in your classrooms?
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out why they had to do that, but I think it has a lot to do with pronunciation of last names. I mean, obviously right away when you guys are saying my last name, imagine people that aren't familiar with Filipino last name too, which is actually Portuguese origin. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the fact that it's flipped in Korea. You start with the last name first, and it's weird.
I've had a lot of students call me Mr. Kevin or call me like Kevin teacher throughout the course of the semester, and then they finally realize that Kevin isn't my family name. Like at the end of the semester, they're like at one point they come up and they're like, "So, Mr. Mitchell," and I'm like,
"My name is Mitchell."
The other way
Kevin.
around. They're like, "Wait, hold on." Took him a long time to get that connection.
I tell him at the beginning, I'm like, the first day, Mr. McBain is my father's name, so please don't make me feel any older than I already am. But inevitably, I get the Mr. Jack emails, in abundance afterwards.
Oh, of course.
So
I mean, I just tell students on day one to call me Kevin, but that's because we're at the university level. All of my university professors back in the States, I used first name with them always, of course, with us. But in high school and before that, it was always Mr. So-and-so, always.
Correct.
And so I think if I was teaching at a lower level here, I'm not sure what I would do exactly. The Hagwan that I worked at just part-time last summer, they told us to go with Mr. Kevin, but it kind of felt a bit weird. Like I almost wanted to be Mr. Mitchell there because I'm teaching with like little kids, things like that. But at the university, definitely just first name.
I feel like it depends on what you're teaching too. Like I do first name as well, and I always have because my students have always been university students. So, and what I'm teaching has always been communication. So what I always tell my students is the same thing. I'm like, guys, we're going to practice basic common communication. So I'm going to use your first names and you're going to use my first name because that's what we want to, we just want to kind of normalize this. It's the most common way to interact with someone. I mean, I just had to pick something, I guess. I mean, it's a bit arbitrary, but yeah, I don't know. I don't like the whole like professor, like teacher, Mr.
Too formal,
sir. Like it doesn't jive for me. Also. Yeah, it doesn't jive for me. Like never, it wouldn't in the States either. I wouldn't let it fly. Like, it's too weird.
Yeah, not at a uni.
But do you ever had that situation where you like your student asks you, your student like traveled overseas and they studied at maybe like a university for a semester in America, they come back and then they're going back again and they always ask me like, what should I call my professor? He's not my professor now. Or what should I say to him? What should I say to him? I'm like, just say hello. And they're like, what? I couldn't possibly say hello. That's so rude, right? And it's like, no, we don't have all that, that baggage. You can just kind of throw it away. So Ryan, man, we just want to thank you for, volunteering to, for reaching out on Facebook and volunteering to come on our show. We've never done an interview before. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is our first one. You're the test subject, I guess.
I was excited to reach out because when I saw your post, I this is my first foray into teaching at a Hagwan after being in a public school for quite some time. I just felt like I had a lot to share and just talk about some similarities and differences, and I'm pretty sure it will resonate pretty strongly with you guys too, hearing that you have a long experience or long background with education as well.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think Kev, was your plan to be a teacher when you were in university? Was that a goal?
It's kind of funny. I mean, I know we talked about this in that first episode, but it wasn't a goal necessarily, but I was a teacher for all through graduate school as
Yeah.
well. And so I kind of stumbled into teaching, but then after I had been teaching for 3 years through graduate school, I realized I was like, oh, I quite like this already. And so at that point, yeah, I think when I came to Korea and once I graduated from grad school and I was looking around for jobs, it was let's continue this education thing because it was fun. When I was in undergrad, no, education wasn't
That wasn't
initially
your,
the plan.
you weren't like a kid going like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a teacher. That
No, I
wasn't
wanted to be an
your,
architect when I was
an
when I was a kid.
architect. Okay. Or president of the
But
United States, right?
yeah, not so
Ryan,
much, but yeah.
you were in education, our Ryan, Ryan A. Yeah, was yours, were you going to be a teacher or was you more in like an administrative side or?
No,
what
I
was
was
your-
I was already working as a school psychologist. Very briefly, I was finishing the last part of my program when I decided that I wanted to do some research that led me abroad, that eventually led me to Chungang, and then I gave up that track. So my intention was to be working as yeah, I guess a school psychologist, you call like a administration,
I don't
but
know.
never
Yeah,
a
that's
teacher.
kind of like a counselor or yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah, I guess
it's like
part of the administration.
one half of the job is counseling. So you're working with social workers and the students. So it's whatever type of issues, you know, kids have. They get most of their psychological health care through public education. So that's just how the US works. So it's about one half the job. The other half is program and system design. So, you know, working with doing audits, a lot of audits, which is basically what I was doing in Busan as well. Like going into schools and checking out what is working, what's not working, trying to come up with like theories, improve systems. So not as much fun as teaching at all.
Yeah.
Teaching is way better.
I stumbled, you know, ass backwards into teaching. So my original degree was in communications. I wanted to work in Los Angeles and Hollywood for either television, film, whatever. Went to teach for 1 year overseas, never went back again, and that was 21 years ago. So we're all coming from a little different places here, but I guess Ryan, why don't you share your background with us a little bit?
Yeah.
Was teaching always like on the horizon for you?
That's always been the question, right? They're always like, what brought you into teaching? That's always like
Yeah.
the first question in an interview if you're getting hired anywhere. Honestly, no. So I'm 39 years old, and I came into the game quite late. I spent most of my time. It's funny that you brought that up, that you went to Hollywood for a while to do your thing. I was actually when I was younger, when I was 17, 18, I did acting and modeling back in Portland. And then I got signed with an agency and led me to LA. So I spent a lot of time in my 20s, like just jumping around jobs and doing like modeling jobs and then doing acting like gigs, like getting my SAG card and everything, like little bits here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it just wasn't like consistent enough. As you know, with that kind of industry, it's just very up and down. You'll get a paycheck, you won't get a paycheck, you'll get residuals, you won't get residuals.
Yeah.
And one day, while I was working in one of my serving jobs, one of my buddies was like, you should be a personal trainer. That, I know it's kind of an odd thing. He's like, to lead to education, but that's actually what led me to education, because there was a lot of similarities. So what happened was I said, sure, why not? It was 24-hour fitness and pretty standard personal trainer gig, whatnot. And for some odd reason, I ended up teaching a decent amount of teachers, or coaching a decent amount of teachers. There was a lot of teachers that were coming in. And one,
like public school teachers you're talking about, like just in the LA school system? Just
Oh no, this was like, okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. I did that. I got hired in LA and then I went back to Portland.
Oh, okay. So you grew up in the
now I'm
Pacific
back in
Northwest?
Portland.
Is that?
I'm kind of skipping,
okay.
Yeah, Pacific Northwest, yeah.
Okay.
I'm skipping back and forth. So, but I moved back to Portland, and I'm personal training all these teachers that just somehow are in my radar. And one actually approached me and she tells me that, you know, there's a lot of similarities to this, to what you're doing, and you should check that out. I was like, okay. And I actually ended up shadowing her one day.
Mhm.
I came in and I have a very young looking face, and it was kind of a funny story because I don't know if it was a teacher or an admin was like, are you late for class? Who are you? And everything. I was like, no, I'm just here. Because I had a backpack too.
Where's
I was
your
gonna
hall
take
pass?
notes and
Yeah.
yeah, where's your hall pass? Yeah, exactly. So I sat in there, watched her teach, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And so I was actually finishing up too. I went back to school at that time. This was like now towards like my I would say like my late 20s and whatnot. I was finishing up my undergrad, which was for sports science and everything. So I wanted to kind of pursue that personal trainer thing, since that's what I was doing for quite a while. And there was this one class, it was the ED 420 class, and it was about like experiencing what schools are like, right? To see if education is for you, if you want to go into education. So we go into this classroom, and the first thing that this teacher does, this professor does, is he plays a video, or not video, but a PowerPoint, and he shows slides where teachers fall on the scale of pay. And he goes, how do you guys like that? And we're like, whoa. And then he shows another PowerPoint slide. I still remember this years ago. And it showed where teachers fall in the scale of respect in society in the United States.
Yeah.
And after he showed those two slides, he looked at the class. He's like, if this bothers you, then you must leave the classroom now. And I'm not kidding you, half of the class left.
They walked
Half of the
out?
class left.
Really?
And I was like, I had a feeling I should, but there was also a feeling that like kept me in my seat. I was like, wow, this is very intriguing. I want to see where this goes. So that kind of led the road to teaching, and obviously led to eventually going into getting my master's as an educator. But there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of ups and downs. And my mom was actually an educator, but it never was something that led me to it. And I have my aunts on my dad's side who were educators as well, but it never like dawned on me that, oh, this is something that I really, really wanted to do.
Did your mom try to talk you out of it? Like, you know, given like the trend line that we've seen in the last, 20 or 30 years in America is respect has declined. I'm assuming, right? Like I don't think it started that way. And
she never, she didn't experience it in that manner. So background on my parents, they're immigrants from the Philippines. My dad was actually U.S. Navy, who that's how we were able to get our citizenship. They were recruiting, Filipinos to be in the U.S. Navy or any military types for the U.S.
Okay.
So he was recruited, and from there, well, going back, my mom was a teacher in the Philippines, so it was a completely different scenario. I'm gonna give you a little bit more background. I went to high school in the Philippines. So I even saw a completely different like scenario there too, but this was like 96 to 2000.
Yeah.
So coming here to Korea, just now getting like all these different like experiences from like the middle school, and even going to private school myself, private and public school. Yeah.
So what year did you get to Korea?
Oh, last year.
Oh,
okay.
So
Okay.
Yeah, we're brand new. Yeah, I was doing it. I was doing my long stint. I was pretty much close to tenure in my school district over in Vancouver Public Schools, which is like bordering of Portland. So it's Vancouver, Washington. But yeah, it was a tough decision because, you give up a lot. If you've been in a school district in the States, especially one that like, how the scale is with pay, if you have a master's and if you're teaching certain types of blocks, like I was an honors teacher at one point, I was doing National Juniors Honor Society. I was doing a lot of things that were pushing my middle school, and that was pushing me to like seniority, I guess, and I don't know, it was tough, but at the same time, it's you need change as well. You need to see something different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big shift. I mean, I know it's the same in Chicago. That's where I was at with teachers in Chicago. If you've put in that much time, if you leave, we have had a system where you could leave for a certain period of time, but if you lapse, then yeah, you're back to the bottom of the totem pole.
Correct. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Right. So that's why I want to ask you. So what was your reason to leave?
That's
And
a
are
great
you going to
question.
stay?
Great question. So
And why Korea specifically, I guess, to tack onto that.
yeah, let me get you all that information. So my first teaching job, I'll start from the beginning. My first teaching job was I got it I wasn't even done with my master's program, and I think it was because the school district was really hurting for teachers. There was a shortage for a while. I don't know if it was the same around. I feel like it was the same around the country around 2013, 2012. That's when I was about to graduate, and I remember in that interview, it was a coastal town in Oregon. I left the interview and then they called me right away. They hired me, and I was like, I'm not even done with my master's program. I was like, no, we know you're going to pass. And then, so that was my first year there. I taught 5th grade there. And then I just started to miss living in the city, miss Portland. I spent 20 years there, back and forth there. And then of course, seeing LA a bit. So I tried to get hired back into the Portland metro area, which Vancouver was part of. And I luckily was able to be, I got hired there and spent the next 7 years over there. And after a few years, it wasn't the worst thing. But Ryan, you said something that really resonated with me, because you said you're a counselor, right? That's something that I felt like was a beautiful thing to embody as a teacher, but it also was a taxing thing on myself on a daily basis. And what I'm not even a counselor, by all means, I'm not, but you know this, and as you know, if you've taught in a public school anywhere in the United States, you are not just a teacher. You are a counselor. You are a parent. You are there. You're the shoulder to cry on.
You're part of the team. You're part of the team. That's exactly how we'd go into a meeting. And to be clear, I never worked professionally. I was in my practicum. I was finishing my program. Yeah. So, but in that capacity, the teacher is part of the team. It's like you got a teacher, a parent, and you have social workers, counselors, psychologists, police in some cases. Yeah. And you're a unit. Like a teacher is not just a class walking into a classroom. Your job is, you don't go off the clock.
But do you feel like 100%. Sometimes that support system is lacking though in a lot of cases where you are playing the role of parent and also teacher and also protector?
Yes. Yes, and this, and I'm not even going to say that the area I was in, Portland is not like a horrible area or whatnot. And I'm not trying to compare or anything, but if I were to say in an area that is decently affluent and you have families that are struggling, most of the issues I see is that the parents just don't have time for the kids, and I was actually going to relate that to what I'm starting to see here in Korea. There's actually a similarity in a different sense. They handle it in an odd and different way. Not odd, but it's just a different way that I'm not accustomed to, and I've come to understand a little bit more. But yeah, so a lot of times, you either have a lot of it is from broken families, right? You got single family households, or maybe even if it's in most cases, it's probably that kid is the one that's taking care of the younger siblings, right? They have younger siblings. They're already doing things that maybe a mother should be doing, like feeding the babies and everything, and changing diapers and whatnot. I hear these stories, or even hearing stories of abuse and whatnot that kids would just pour out to me. And we only had, going back to the counselors we were talking about, if we're in a school of 600-700 kids and we only have 3 counselors, and at one point we were down to 2, how is that servicing the population? Right. How is that servicing the population? So going back to the initial question you had, what brought me to Korea? A lot of different reasons. I need change. I'm the type of person that needs to constantly see change. And I also learned that I was going to wear myself out with the way I wear my heart in my, what is that, on my sleeve? Is that how is that the term? But I knew if I kept going on this, this would be the death of me, because I took my job seriously.
Well, do you
And I know
feel
that-
like oh, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
Like,
no, go ahead.
as a person who's empathetic, were you starting to get cynical at that point? Or,
That's the thing.
yeah.
That's what I wanted to avoid, because I saw
Mhm.
that happen to a lot of my other coworkers, where they just were just. So I'll give you an example. The moment that we had already decided that I was leaving, I went to meet up with some teachers, and I was on this kick of like, I just want to let go, like I want to find positivity in life, right? And I want to remember the good stuff that I learned from all of this. I sat down. We were at a bar, and I said my goodbyes, and they went bam right away, smack talking, just straight smack talking about every kid that they could talk about. I was like, dude, there's some parents over here, man. Like, you gotta watch what you're doing, right? And I'm not gonna name names or anything. I'm not gonna put anybody on the bus, but like, I feel like it is a common thing that we do. Like, as humans, we vent, because there's nowhere to go. I understand why they did what they did, because there's nowhere to push those emotions. Their teachers are kind of in somewhat of a battlefield in the United States currently, especially, and I feel for them. But at the same time, I also don't think that is also the solution, is to sit there and just talk smack. And I just felt like that was unhealthy for me as well. Like, it was also becoming a toxic environment where like you were saying, Ryan, it should be a team, right? It didn't feel. I had a team, and my team was good within what we call PLCs, which is like our 6th grade unit. We were great. But beyond that bubble that we had, there was a collapse throughout the whole system.
Like a collapse of morale, or
oh yeah, like the whole, it just wasn't. It just was it. There was no trust. There was no trust in like how.
What I was relating about the team, I was saying that, at least in CPS, the team. I mean, it sounds like a good thing. Like, you have this support network. But what I was trying to imply is that that's your job. Your job is coordinating with that team. Like, and those people, they're going to email you. They're going to call you. You're going to take phone calls at 1 a.m. It's part of your life. And you just never go off the clock, because you're not just a teacher in a classroom. You're on this support team, and you have, like you were saying, like it's not just like teachers, to student ratio, but even like support services. I mean, when I graduated from the master's program, Kev, CPS, Chicago Public Schools. When I graduated from the master's portion of the program, I had a class in, I think it was just like organizational skills or something like this. And the professor gave us a USB, and the USB had files on it that were all like basically like your case reports with plug and play paragraphs. So you could, like, you're supposed to be writing like a detailed report about a student that's had like a crisis. It's a paragraph that's pre-written, and you just like sub out their name. That's how busy you are and how little attention you're giving to them. And it was really sobering. It was like, are you kidding? They're like, yeah, you can't write 4,000 case reports in a year. It's not going to happen. Like, yeah, it's a tough situation out there.
Yeah.
So back to
yeah.
So to Korea, I can see then why you came here. So the second part of the question, and also what Kevin said, why Korea, and will you stay?
Yeah. So my wife is she's Korean, and we've been really fortunate, actually, because she when we first started dating, she was working for US Airways and now currently works for American Airlines. She's close to probably being done. She's pregnant. So she's
congrats.
Yeah, congratulations, man.
Our first kid, yeah, we're really excited. Can't wait. April. But
wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's coming close. In Korea too.
Mine just turned 13 a little while ago.
Oh,
so,
congratulations.
I'm way in. Yeah.
Wow, teens. But yeah, I felt like, so this was back in the summer of 2021, and just woke up one day, like I looked at her, like, I know you love to travel. I know that we haven't really got to go anywhere, but I think a change of scenery will help both of us. I mean, the pandemic is another reason why we needed to get out. And it sounded like it was impossible to come to even move anywhere if you just watch the news. And you're in the middle of 2021, or if you're in the middle of the year 2020 and you just watch the news, you just feel like you can't really do anything or go anywhere. But the reality is it's actually doable. You just have to take a lot of steps to get to that process and talk to the right
How did you
people.
find the job in Korea? Did you go through recruiters or?
No, we have a friend. So we have a
nice.
friend who used to work in a hagwan, who was I guess do they call them administrators? I'm still trying to figure out the name of like their, I guess they are administrators, administrator of a hagwan. And she's not anymore, but she's like, I'll get you connected. And they saw my resume, and right away they liked what they saw. And you know, it was almost like I was just like kind of a shooting in the dark, because you didn't know what to really expect. Because it's a hagwan, it's an academy, versus coming from a public school. You know,
You're going
so
public.
there was a
to private,
lot of
you
things
know?
when I first came here, actually, and you probably will know right away what I'm about to say. That just like was like a culture shock to me, not just being in Korea, but like more culture shock of how hagwans are operating. And maybe it's different in where my hagwan is versus others. I've heard there's like differences too in all the different places. But yeah, that's what brought us here. Mostly change and like, you know, the thrill of adventure. We're travelers at heart, my wife and I. And then the last question to answer, sorry, it takes me a while to get to them, but like we've said a year to 2 years out here, because we want to travel around Asia. It's the pandemic that's like really just kind of tying us down right now. But the moment that like things start to loosen up, I feel like we'll see how it goes here for a couple of years possibly, and then maybe see what teaching's like in like Vietnam, see what teaching's like for me, and like even like going to like Indonesia. So we're just gonna hop around like Southeast Asia. And then she even talked about Europe. So, you know, we want to just like test what teaching's like all throughout the world, you know.
That's
Teaching
awesome.
English is a good way to do that. What kind of hagwan are you at? Is it like a really big place? Is it like how many foreign teachers is a good metric?
Let's see here. Gosh,
Approximately.
So if there are 12 kids in a classroom and there are 1, 2, 8, gosh, there's a lot of teachers, man. Because we teach, I don't want to give away the name or whatnot, but it's in Mokdong. I don't know if it's like that's
you're
like
in.
I was told it's like the mecca of
That's where I
hagwans.
lived when I first came to Korea. Actually, it's kind of funny too, because I remember going to like the Wikipedia article for Mokdong when I first came here, and it was like, this is the high Ritz area of Seoul and everything. I was like,
It's got Rodeo Drive, right? My mother-in-law lives in Mokdong, actually. So
yeah, that's supposedly what they were all like trying to say. It's glitzy and glamorous or whatnot. We don't live in Mokdong. We live like more on the edge of it, where it's like Guro, because they would have put me in like a hagwan, like an office stall or whatever they call them.
yeah,
And that wouldn't have worked for a growing family. So it worked out that like we had some, again, we had some good friends that were able to get us a 2-bedroom apartment in Guro, which is
wow, that's a difficult find. So yeah, awesome.
No joke. That's what we found. You know, once we did a little bit of research, we honestly have gotten very, very, very lucky. But yeah, there are a lot of so we teach kindergarten, but like early kindergarten too. They have things called ECP, early childhood 5, 6, and 7. I teach early.
And that's Korean age 5, 6, 7, right?
Oh, I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoons there's 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade. So that's
pretty big.
Yeah, it's huge. So someone told me this is the biggest, and they're a chain. So they're telling me in comparison to the other chains, this is the main chain. I not to give anything away or whatnot, and it's a big name. I'm not gonna you know, because
I
I have
honestly
some
don't even
things.
know kids Hagwans names at
I'm
this
not even
point.
sure now. Yeah, it's been a while for
Yeah.
me. It's been a
I don't
minute.
know. I just
Yeah.
don't want to like put
No, no,
the
no.
like. I don't want to say some things that
You want to
might like.
dox anybody
Yeah,
or any
exactly.
Yeah,
institution?
no reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
comparing like what you were doing back home, aside from it being like a different, like a demographic shift, obviously
Yeah.
it's, you know, the Korean and probably pretty homogenous group.
Right.
The age level's different, right, from what you were
Yeah.
teaching, right? So that's a
Dude.
massive difference.
Whew, I gotta tell you, you know, the one thing though, it's an academy, so it's parents that can afford to put these kids into the school. So at first I was like, man, are all Korean kids like this, right? And then so I've had some other friends who like who had taught in different Hagwans. They're like, no, no, dude, this is a different kind of Hagwan. Or he was like some others that came from public schools, like, no, 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 this is
Yeah,
my
if
kid
you've got
really like,
Hagwan, if you've got kids that are there all day, like the 5,
yeah,
6, 7-year-olds, then
yeah.
that's like Yuchiwan. And a good English Yuchiwan is going to be,
It
I don't know
used to be
offhand, but
$1,200 back in the day,
I
but
was going to
it's
say
probably
like
more
I
15.
was told
Yeah.
our place is like around 2 something.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's
wow.
right. Well, these kids can speak some amazing English, and it
Yeah.
blows my mind. So they use this curriculum that's actually the same that we adopted, and my it's called Wonders. We adopted that in our school district, Vancouver Public School. And they had all this hoopla. You know how it is whenever they release something new, and you have to go through all the training and whatnot. But it's interesting because the way that they do it here is literally like this, like it's so methodical. It's like you gotta do this, 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 this. You gotta follow it to a T, and it's very robotic. And to be honest, as a teacher who loves to just be very fluid with his work, it gets quite boring. And as a teacher, you can still make it fun, and I still do. But I remember teaching Wonders before, and the first thing they tell you is like explore around with it. You know, you hit your Common Core standards, you hit your standards. That's kind of what they do as a teacher in the States. As long as you hit your standards, knowing that you've hit, oh, did you teach like nouns, pronouns, or whatever, then you can jump around throughout the curriculum itself. With the Hagwan, they don't allow you to do that because the parents need to see that there's a check mark on every single page
Right.
of corrections, because it's for this test that they have to take to make sure that they pass it or whatnot. And that's their study.
Would you guys agree with this? Is kind of aside, but maybe like a 30-year project in Korea has been how to design the perfect curriculum that is fail safe regardless of the skills of the teacher. Do you know what I mean? Like instead of like, let's hire good teachers. I think they always, you know, obviously they got, you know, you're like a unicorn almost at a Hagwan because you have a master's degree, 8 years of experience education. They're going to hold on to you. They're going to, you know, they hit the jackpot. You've got another, you know, history major from you know, university coming over for never taught before. They're trying to create this curriculum that is so paint by the numbers that no one could screw it up. But in the course that I kind of go, it just cuts against like anything that like John Dewey would have written, or, you know what I mean? Like any of these, what we really know about education, as you know, with the teacher being able to facilitate a learning experience instead of just like going through some kind of rote list of words or phrases or whatever. But that was an aside anyway.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, it's going to take a lot of time. Because there's this thing that became very popular in the States before I left. It was called Teacher as a Designer, and it was like taking the Common Core standards, or the standards, whatever you want to call them, because they call them something before Common Core even was named Common Core, or whatever standards were there, and you basically would create your own curriculum. You create your own projects out of it, right? And that's what made it more fun, because then you can create, you had more creative process throughout the whole thing. And that's what I did with my middle school classes. You know, there was more creativity involved in it, as long as I hit my standards, as long as I knew that I was teaching what exactly they should be learning within that time frame, you know. But here in Korea, it's the Hagwons are different, and that's going to be tough because parents are paying. That's the biggest thing. That's how they constantly remind the teachers parents are paying. And so, but I also understand that's true, that there's truth in that. You know, it's the biggest difference is, and they beg to differ on this, but I will constantly say it, they're a business. It's a business before it is truly education.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Hagwans are very much that.
And that's tough for a lot of people that are within the hagwan. Like I'll say that consistently within there. It's like, I'm sorry guys, but we're within a business. Like I beg to differ. I was like, I'm sorry, but yes, we are here for the kids, but we're for the more than anything for the parents who are paying. You keep saying that,
Yeah.
and so it becomes a business.
This is a tough thing, I think, for all teachers and like any type of education, right? It's like even if you're at a public university, and we're at a private one, but even like you, I'm just trying to make like an extreme example. There might seem like there's a lot of creative flexibility. Like we have a lot, right? Pretty much we just get a textbook and we're told do whatever you want. Not quite, but almost. But the teacher is always in that category. It's like, I don't know, in the 12 years that I've been teaching, I started using this expression. Because Ryan, I totally agree with you. It's like, you got to meet expectations. You got to remember that, you know, you can be passionate about teaching and you can be altruistic and try to be individually serving to each student. That's awesome. But you also have to remember that this is your job and you're part of a company structure, no matter what. I mean, unless you're like volunteering or something. So that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Did you guys find, I mean, something that I experienced was you could be a great teacher, you could be an average teacher, but it really comes down to, do the kids like you? You know what I mean? That's which in the, I'm assuming now you could maybe expound on this a little bit, but that's not the metric where you were coming from in Portland, right? Like the metric would be, are they meeting the requirements? Are they passing the tests, the Common Core requirements? And here it seems more like, yeah, we can always, you know, fix the English or whatever, but are you happy? Are you having a good time? You know, is it fun? Is that, do you find that one of the differences? Or I guess we could dig into some of the things that I'm kind of really curious about the difference.
I experienced that a bit at the Hagwan that I worked at last summer part-time, Jack. Like it was just a part-time job, but a couple of times the admin would come up to me and they'd be like, "Oh, you're doing a great job." And I'm like, "Really?" Because I'm not good with kids. And they were just like, "Really? Yeah, you're like, the kids like you. Like we tried to move one kid out of your class to another one, and they were like, no, we want to stay with Kevin. So you're doing a good job. Keep it up."
Exactly.
And they didn't ask me what I was doing. They're just like, the kids like you. You're doing well. I still don't know what I was doing, but yeah.
Well, relationship building is like the core of being a teacher, you know, and that's something that you learn like in your first few years of teaching. So going back to my first year of teaching and including my student teaching years, I thought being the cool person, like, you're in a, I don't know, like back, what was this, 2012, 2013, which is odd. They're still in the Pokemon now. So back then they were in the Pokemon too. So you'd be like, oh, you name some Pokemon or whatever. It's like, okay, I'm on their side. You think that's what would get them to like you and everything. But I learned the hard way. The reality is they start treating you like a child, actually. So
or like a peer, like we're on the same level, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. So what it was that actually worked is that you just be yourself, but you create an environment that's safe. You create an environment that is structured, but allows them for trust. So that's kind of what I pride myself in. I'm a big believer in classroom management. And that's something that's been interesting for me here in Korea, because I don't really have to use it as much as I had to in the States. Creating structure, you know, because, you know, these kids will come in and like, and then they'll start throwing F-bombs and this and that. And then so, you know, you got to, you know, put in their place and then the set up the structures and then, you know, send them outside to give them the talk and like really like do the heart to heart and whatnot, and let them understand that they're being heard and everything. It's interesting not having to have to do it as much here. but it's also interesting going back to what you were saying, like you said, like they're hiring history graduates or those who never had any education experience. I fear for them if they can't handle like classroom management in Hagwans, it will be incredibly difficult if they decide to pursue it in the United States. I'm just being dead honest because it's a completely different scenario. You know, it's at least from what I've experienced. You still have to have classroom management out here, and I've seen people fail. I'm like, how can you fail with classroom management? Like,
These are a
how
bunch
can
of like
you-
rich kids, and like built into the culture is respect for teachers. Like it's basically teed up for
Yeah.
you, you know, like what,
Exactly.
how did
but
you F this up, you know?
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
can't knock it out, you need a different career.
Yeah.
Exactly, but that's funny. In the Hagwan I've already been in, I've already seen it where a few people have like struggled with classroom management. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
If you're pursuing this career in teaching, you know, at least you're trying here. And now, hopefully, you learn that this might not be the path for you. You know, so yeah.
That's really interesting. I was curious about that, you know. I think where you were coming from, there's probably a more diverse how can I say this delicately, like economic
Demographic?
background.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, well, also probably diverse ethnically as well, right? I mean, I'm assuming, but I'm not sure what
Yeah.
the demographics were for where you were teaching.
Oh,
But then you
yeah.
come to something
So-
that's more homogenous. It's
Oh, yeah.
different, you know.
And that's tough too, because you know before I left, especially teaching middle schoolers, there were a lot of talks, and we got some serious talk. We do Socratic seminars too with the sixth graders, where they would do debates, and you know, a lot of ideas would just be going back and forth. If you've ever seen those being done before with students, they're amazing. But it'd be things like even on LGBTQ community, like you know, equality, right? Like, you know, talking about equality with race and everything. So coming here, it's amazing to hear how intelligent these, you know, how well spoken these 7-year-olds are, but at the same time have never really been exposed to other people out there. And have a very hard understanding of what, you know, it's very innocent, you know, but it is, like you said, it's very homogenous. They've never seen it. It's not it's not mixed within the classroom.
Right. And parents that can afford 2 million a month
Yeah,
are in a different, so, you know, economic strata than
exactly.
a lot of people. So there's even a difference probably within Korea that you might not be privy to, just based on the threshold of, you know, how much it costs to get into a hagwan or
Right.
whatnot. But
Yeah.
if I were to ask you, like, if you could Frankenstein monster the best elements of like the West and the East, if just based on your experience, what would you what were the kind of positive things that you noticed in the West versus the things that you've experienced here? What would those be? Is there anything that I don't want you to like call out Korea? I don't want you to get in trouble or anything. I'm not I'm not trying to
Well, I
trap you
will
or anything,
say-
but
That's why, Jack, you asked the question really well. You said, what are the good things in the States? And what are the good things here?
Right,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
yeah.
trap.
Good.
We don't have to worry
Yeah.
about the negatives yet.
part of our when we started this podcast, we're you maybe, I'm not sure if you've listened to other episodes, but we try to keep it in a radical positivity, because there are so many like black pilled, you know, we could get together at once a week and just bitch about Korea for an hour. It'd be easy, you know what I mean? But I think it takes a little more creativity, a little more thinking,
Right.
and also it's more healing for the soul to not do that,
Exactly.
you know. So
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So the thing that I would say is that I would take from the States, that, you know, the most obvious thing is just like that free spirit, you know, the idea of like thinking outside of the box. That, you know, one of the things that were really big, and actually I've seen a lot of it happening here too, STEM, which is like science and technology, right? A lot of those things that kids will build things, right? So doing a lot of these kind of like these like project-based assignments, those kind of things would be such a contribution in every kind of like very hands-on activity. Like
Mhm.
there was a lot of those kind of things that were becoming big in the United States, and you know, that would have been nice to see mixed with taking Korea's like very rigid structure, because that's kind of you kind of you need that though. You need that rigidity to kind of set up that pathway, that straight pathway. I don't know if you've ever read this book called Focus, but it's a popular education book, and it basically goes back to if the United States went back to putting the classroom, the students sitting forward just like they used to, having the structure like it used to be, it would actually set a lot of schools up for more success. Whereas, because I don't know how, if you know, they started changing classrooms into free seating classrooms. I don't know if you know what this is, but there'll be like swivel chairs, there'll be bouncy chairs.
Really?
In middle school?
Oh yeah,
Even
man.
in middle
They-
school?
Yeah,
Oh man,
yeah,
So-
I missed this. I missed
Wow.
this. All right.
Yeah, they've even had, some schools even had like, you know, they, because kids are so fidgety, they're like they instead of,
So they decided to lean into it. I don't know. I don't see
yeah,
like
they start to give
Hey,
them things-
everybody gets
yeah.
a fidget spinner, you know, like
Yeah,
just at the beginning
exactly.
of the school year. Yeah.
Or like there'd be like beanbag stations and things like that. It's like, I forget the name of it's like a free flow classroom or something like that. It became super popular. I think like in 2017 and 2018, a lot of teachers were doing it. I attempted it for like 1 month. I was like, I need structure because this is not going to work for a lot of the students, you know? So for me, and then again, I think to answer your question, there's no perfect system, to be honest with you, Jack. Like there really isn't. And what it is more than anything, it all comes back to relationship building. And if you think of how relationships are built, let's say with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or a mother and their kids, right? There's a lot that has to be built. There's a lot of trial and error that has to go through. So it's the same thing that has to happen in a classroom. So in the first 3 months, whenever I teach, the first 3 months are my get to know you, build up our relationship, and then we're gonna hit the ground running. You know, obviously I'm still teaching things, but I need to make sure that you're ready to go. You know, here in Korea, not so much because they're already like structured to like, you know, respect their parents, but like just going back to thinking about how it is in the States and most Western.
I prioritize that in my classroom, even with like Korean freshman students. Absolutely, man. Same thing. Even the way I look at my lesson plans, doesn't matter the class. I would say the first 2 weeks are pretty much bookmarked as rapport building and figuring out the relationships that are in the classroom that pre-exist, and looking for the students that are kind of being left on the side and pulling them into the fold, making sure everybody feels comfortable. That probably really extends for the first third of the semester. Totally the same.
I love hearing that. And I love that because I guess I don't get to hear too much about that, being surrounded around mostly the younger children. So like, I'm always actually curious about what it's like with the older.
Well, I think in Korea, you get to be a child longer in Korea in an odd way. There's an innocence to, so even though we're teaching university students, I would say there's still, you know, emotionally it's somewhere between, you know, like still in high school and dipping their toe into university. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I mean,
I think that's an interesting point.
I want to qualify that though. Like that's an observation. I think a lot of people, if you're listening and you've been teaching here, you probably have a similar feeling. It's kind of hard to relate it. We're not saying like Korean students are immature or anything like this.
No, not
but,
at all.
But their reality is very different from the average American 19-year-old freshman students, because maybe not themselves, but the average life experience of a student in the room is very different. Like when I was 19, I'm getting my first apartment. I'm paying my first bills. I'm grocery shopping for myself. Like that's a very common thing. That's not unique. For many of the students, and probably I would just say on average, your community, the people around you, even if it's not you, there's a good chance you're still living with a lot of support that you had back in high school. It hasn't changed a whole lot. You're still kind of with mom and dad in some ways. I think that kind of helps it to still feel a little bit like high school when we're teaching freshmen. I feel, I don't know.
Yeah,
Possible.
and so I think, like you said, when you're setting those boundaries, and you're rapport building, but you're also at the same time building respect, setting boundaries, and kind of establishing like how the rest of this is going to go. When I first started teaching, I came in, I go, all I want them to do is just like me so I can keep this job. And it was just party time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to listen to this clown. He's a joker. That's, you know, he established that on day one, you know, and then trying to claw that back and, you know, after is nearly impossible. You know what I mean? Like but you can always come in as a hard ass and lighten up as time goes by. And you go, oh, I thought this guy was kind of a dick, but he's actually pretty cool. Like that's a much better way to
That's
go.
your method?
You know?
That's
That's my method,
there's
right? Yeah.
Yeah, bad cop, good cop.
Bad cop, good
Yeah,
cop.
there's they say don't
Two-Face.
smile till November or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
That's
I like
that's
that.
What, that's what they say for new teachers. Like, don't smile till November. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Oh,
fantastic.
nice.
Yeah. Oh man.
To go
I have
back to comparing Korea and American like schools a bit, I'm curious what you found might be easier and or more difficult with the different groups. And I don't mean specifically like, you know, teaching grammar is easier in one place or the other, because that's just academic stuff. That's
Sure.
that's going to depend on anything. But like, I don't know. What you think? I've got a couple of ideas of what things that I found are tougher with some of my Korean tutoring kids in general.
Yeah. So you know, I have some high level kids, and so they get a lot of their work done. But in terms of one of the things I'll say that has been so nice off of my back is not having to talk to parents that often, you know, but it also takes away an element that I do miss, because you miss, again, Ryan, you're right. It is a team. It's almost like I'm kind of disconnected from the team. So there's pros and cons to disconnecting me away from them.
That's kind of interesting that you deal less with the parents here, even though they're your direct customer here. Whereas
So,
in the States, you deal with them more, even though they are less, I don't know, not a part of it, but.
Yeah, and it is very interesting, because like they'll come at you really hot too in the States, because you know they're very protective of their kids and they don't want to feel like
No doubt.
parent. No one wants to ever feel like they're a bad parent. But here in Korea, you know, you have at least in our classroom, we have us and then the Korean teacher, and she'll do all of the calls and everything to the parents. And all I can think of in my head is like, I feel bad for her, because that's a lot to take on a weekly basis. And, you know, if I were to assume, it could possibly be similar to what they would call like helicopter parents in the United States, right? Like
that happens here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying
Isn't that tiger moms here?
Tiger moms.
Tiger
Yeah,
moms,
there you go.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, for me, it is a positive, but and again, back to what Ryan was saying, it's a negative in a sense, because it makes a disconnect when you're trying to create a cohesive team, right? Everything needs to work as a unit, from teacher to parent to support staff to principal and whatnot, right? To student, right? They all have to work as a cohesive unit. So when I'm like kind of like not being told anything and it's just like, just teach, it's okay, well, I guess I'm not going to worry about it. But then I wonder, like, well, what do your parents feel about this? Like, I want to know, like, you know, let's dive deep into like who you are as a person based off of who your parents are. Like when I would do like these parent teacher conferences and I meet the parents, it would make me understand the child more. I can understand where a lot of things are coming from.
Oh, no doubt.
Without that connection, I have, you know, it makes it a lot harder. So
I think,
and I don't envy those
Hagwan.
Korean teachers having to call the parents every week. That's a tough
it is
gig
a
as well.
tough gig for them. Yeah.
She kind of functions as like a lineman. To use a football analogy here, she's kind of a lineman to your quarterback. You know, like
100%.
She's gonna take the hits and do the blocking and stuff.
Oh, she does. She does a lot, man. Oh gosh, she's playing offense and defense.
Is your now you said
Special
your wife is
teams,
Korean.
everything.
Did she grow
She
up
is,
in
yeah.
the States? Or
She did.
Okay.
She did. So she, I'll give you a little bit of background of her. She's like me. We were very nomadic growing up. So her parents also came from were immigrants from Korea, and my parents were immigrants from the Philippines. And I was born in Washington. She was born in Florida, and then I moved to Texas, and that's where I went to elementary school and middle school. And then she moved to California, and I believe that's where she did elementary and middle school. And then she moved to Portland, and then I moved to the Philippines, and then I moved to Portland, and then she moved to Arizona.
Damn, you
So
guys
it's
are
a
not kidding, man.
It's a lot of moving around, and then eventually we met each other when I was working in my first year teaching that coastal town school in Oregon that I was talking about. I met her online, and obviously kind of scared her a bit. It took her a while to open up to me. Online dating, who knows, back especially with the early years of 2012, 2013. I don't know if that was considered.
I got married in 2006, so it's all a mystery to me, but yeah. Clearly,
I don't even know where
yeah.
it's at now. It's got to be even like more extreme. Yeah.
But the fact that you guys lasted 8 years now, listening to your history, you must have been itching to get out of there. Maybe years before you decided to actually make the jump. But
yeah, we again, what kind of satiated our need to leave the Vancouver, Portland area was that she had the ability to fly us everywhere. And so like we took a lot of trips everywhere, and I'm obviously so grateful for that we were able to see the world before the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, it hit us both like hard. We were like, we felt trapped just like everybody else. And so again, going back to that question early on, that was one of the biggest reasons why we made the jump here. It's like it's a new environment. And it's uncomfortable. Like, it's a whole. I'm struggling with my Korean. I'm using a lot of Duolingo here, and I put myself in.
I've been
really,
struggling
really,
for 20 years, man.
Oh,
Don't feel bad.
Woo! So like just being in an uncomfortable situation, like on a consistent basis, like it's, I'm approaching my 40s. It's refreshing. I know that sounds odd to a lot of people that are listening, but like for me, what's more dangerous is being in like a complacent situation for the rest of your life versus being in a situation that, it's scary, but at the same time, I can say that I've experienced this.
Well, you're sitting on kind of a lottery ticket, man. I mean, that in a way, because you've got the master's degree, and you've also got the, you're accredited. You've got the licensure. You've taken the praxis or whatever. I don't know what the requirements are in Oregon, but that makes you eligible to teach at an international school in Vietnam. And so I would encourage you to look even beyond the Hagwan. I mean, I think it's really smart to get your feet wet in the Hagwan system, because it's kind of an instant. We've talked about this too. It's kind of life in a bottle, right? You get your house, your money, and everything is just taken care of. Airline tickets, but as you start to kind of get your footing in Korea or whatever, you could potentially make the jump to a university or teach an international school where the pay is better and you get more holiday, which is, I think makes the teaching. It's probably closer to what you were doing back home too. But you still get
someone suggested that too as well, and I was thinking of looking into it. And who knows if where teaching leads me to, because there's something that's telling me that like teaching doesn't necessarily have to happen in the classroom, and it's not just something telling me like, think about the pandemic. Like I was teaching for almost like a year online, like what we're doing right now on Zoom. And so it really like dawned on me, it's like, why am I like forcing myself to be like stuck within this? Like I can do something beyond that. So, but I was we looked into some international schools too. Actually, before we we got before I got hired with the Hagwan. But I got turned down pretty quick. But I think they were a little more weary because they're like, "Who's this guy that's like asking?"
Yeah,
From what I
the
understand,
experience
international school
yeah.
jobs are even almost more of a holy grail than university jobs are. I've got a buddy of mine here who he really wanted an international school job in Thailand, and I think he had his master's. He had some teaching experience here in Korea, and he went and got his teaching certificate and everything like that. And then he was looking at jobs, and the people who have the international school jobs in some of those like tropical countries where you're earning US dollars but paying Thai baht, they've been in those jobs for 20, 30 years. And so those can be really tough to get, but I haven't looked into it myself. That's just what he was telling me. And this was already a decade ago. So I'm not exactly sure where it's at now.
Yeah, don't discount though the relationships and networking and also luck, because it's all about right place, right time. You just never know.
That's true.
And so it's worth I think it's worth the effort, although it has become a little more of a pain in the ass to apply for a job these days with the apostille. I think I pronounced that correctly. Trying to get all those documents and all that stuff in order is
was a pain.
Yeah,
that one was a pain. I remember that one. That was actually what took me a while to get to Korea, actually.
Sure.
Because they were supposedly backed up with getting it done. I'm gonna credit Korea with their speediness with paperwork. I will say that. I'm like, wow, you guys are I at least compared to what I had to deal with doing all the apostille work in the US.
Bureaucracy in America versus Korea. Yes, Korea just smokes America. I'll give that. Yeah.
They're like stamp, but you do have to go to a lot of different offices for very like specific things. You got to be ready to travel to different buildings.
Get your hiking boots on.
It's a day. Yeah. Try getting married here. Like that'll just about break your brain and your soul.
Is that what did you get married over here?
Yeah. My wife is Korean, and we got married back in 2006. But I remember that day just going back between the American Embassy and the City Hall and the lawyer's office to the City Hall, back to the American Embassy, back to here. And I was just like, if this doesn't happen today, like, let's just live together, because I'd rather jump off into the Han River than to go through this again. But yeah. Ryan, is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you wanted to share, or any last thoughts?
No, that was pretty cool for you guys to bring me on and to let me.
Oh, we're happy to do it.
About my
thanks
story.
again for being our first interview too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we still don't know, so it's good to have a fresh voice.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I'm just glad to be able to talk to different educators and their different experiences too. And what I like about you guys is how you really do put that positive spin. You guys are right. There's a lot of groups, let's say on Facebook or whatnot, that just go super, super negative about Korea. But at the end of the day, it's all perspective, and I'll be honest, like when I first got here, I was like, oh, fuck that. Yeah. Am I allowed to cuss? I'm sorry. Is this?
Yeah. No, this is a Christian podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, bleep it out. But I was like, I was pretty upset at first because like you have these American expectations, these Western expectations, right? But then once you start to check yourself, and then you start realizing like there's a lot of beauty here with the culture and like a lot of history, and the people are wonderful and beautiful. I've met a lot of amazing people out here. There's so much to love. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. That's I totally agree with you. I think it comes down to your perspective, and that's kind of a life rule. I think we established that a couple episodes ago. Is that you're bringing your own stuff over here, so maybe it's better to drop that off, leave that with you, and just kind of look at it with fresh eyes. Do you want to plug your? I know you're a pretty avid blogger. You got a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You want to plug that?
Sure. Well, we got a YouTube. It's called The Flip, or I guess if you were to look it up, it's The Flip Forward.
I'll put a link to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll send all that to you. I think I did, but it's basically, it was originally like me discovering Korea for the first time, but I realized a lot of people have done that. But now it's going to transition of what it's like to be a dad in Korea.
That'll be very interesting. Yeah.
So that's what it's becoming, because like everybody's seen Lotte World, everybody's seen Namsan Tower, and they're like, this long-haired guy's gonna go there now, who cares? Right?
Somebody saw the name of our podcast and they're like, oh great, another soul pun podcast. All right. it really hurt my heart there, but sorry, please continue, go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, pivot here or there, whatever. It's gonna be just me and my wife, and how we're coping with the end of the pregnancy, and then moving forward with the first year of our child here in Korea. So yeah, we have the Instagram too, which is called at the flip official. I think that's what it is, the Flip official.
And I'll put it all in the description too, so they can just hit the link and go straight to your Instagram and your YouTube channel. Yeah,
it's all connected.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, Ryan, man, thank you so much for joining us today. This was fantastic. It was very interesting in a perspective that I don't think we've heard yet. And so it's really great to hear that comparison. If you guys, oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Anytime, please come back again too. So yeah.
Tell us what dadding is like in Korea.
I've almost forgot now. I'll tell you what teening is about, but it's not.
I might have you guys on some of my episodes.
There we go.
Oh boy, yeah. So you can download this episode right here, our interview with Ryan, at thesoulpatch.com. That's SEOUL patch.com. It's a one-stop shop. You can see everything, get the YouTube channel. You can visit our Facebook page. If you guys could give us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be hugely helpful. And like I said, you can check us out on YouTube as well. We've got a channel there, but you can just watch the podcast. And yeah, we will. We do have a Patreon button up there now. I don't want to forget that. So if you want to buy us a coffee, you go ahead and smash that Patreon button, and we'd be very, very grateful for that. And anyway, I want to say thanks to our listeners out there, and we will catch you next week at the Patch. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
I'd like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Nothing gear. It's all my love. It's all my love. The quiet man. It's all my love. It's all my love. Dopamine. Jim. It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey Bobby,
let the bass go.
call me an eater, call me a phenomenon. Long face.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love. Obsolete. It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
8-1.
And Zarkov. It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
T-V-V. This is a fan push. T-V-V. Call me an eater. Call me a phenomenon.